So all of your programs this fall were super successful. You won individual awards, your teams won and placed at all the really big events. But I want to get really specific with each of you. And I want to start with the two of you from Michigan. Michigan did not qualify for NCT last year, but it's had a really good fall so far. Most recently, I think last weekend at the time of this recording, you guys finished first at Q8.
Yes.
So I guess what happened last spring, but what's going right for you guys right now that you're doing so well?
I think that we've been asking ourselves that question as well. So obviously it was very disappointing last year not to qualify. It's the second year in a row that our A team hasn't qualified. And actually our B team historically has a better record of qualifying to that tournament than our A team does, which has always been just a little bit of a weird little anomaly in our program. I think that it's really hard to say exactly what went wrong last spring. We had one of the most competitive A teams I've ever seen. We had Jacob Payton, we had Victoria Shanazari, we had Norcon, we had Michael Wilson, we had Serena Bernal. I mean, we had all of these amazing people, Grace Roberts, and then some younger members, but who are also amazing. I think it's hard to say exactly what went wrong. But I think that we've focused a lot on we've had a new approach to how we do witnesses this semester. We used to be very character has a bit oriented, and I think we've toned it down and made the characters a lot more realistic. And I think just our witnessing has improved across the board. And I think that was where we were just missing a lot of points, on direct. We would just have low direct scores on average. And I think we've picked those up a lot this semester, which has really helped. And I just think a lot of people are just kind of coming into their own who were younger recently and now are coming into more leadership roles on the team and just, trying out their own things, getting speeches and stuff for the first time. So I think there's a lot of young, go get them energy on the team this year. There's a lot of young people who are coming up and starting to prove themselves. So I think maybe that's some of the momentum that we've been having. I don't know, Rob, if you have anything else.
Yeah, I would just say our captains, Nor, Gordy, and Michael, they've really had this mentality of helping us play to our strengths. Like Lucy said, we used to be very quip heavy, characters you'd see not in court, you'd see them in a comic book or something doing random stuff. And I think we have dumbed it down a little bit, and it's really helped us make more natural cases and have more natural rounds, which the judges tend to really like. But yeah, really just letting us play to our strengths. And I remember at Case, this judge was your D council tape was really scrappy, and I really like that. And it's that's kind of our style, we go off the cuff, we things are kind of chaotic, but it's organized chaos. And I really think that's been helping us a lot. And I hope it's helped us carry into next semester and a lot of success.
So I want to debut a new segment on the show that has never been done before on the show, and this is the first time. And the segment is called the Bennett Demsky Minute. So I figured what better episode to debut the segment with Bennett's sister and Margaret on the show. So I want to show you guys a mock trial confession that was posted just this past week. And so my question for the first Bennett Demsky Minute segment on WatchMock: do you think we have Bennett on the show too much? And if so, should we ban him?
I will admit, he told me a couple weeks ago that he was going to be on the show again. And I was like, what number is this? How many times have you been doing this? I think for his ego, I think you should ban him from the show.
Ooh. Lucy, you know him better than anybody. Do you agree?
I'm all for giving Bennett less airtime. Love him. But I think it's time to roll some new people in. So I'm happy to be here.
He's given you both lots of nice compliments to me over the course of the last, several months, especially since you guys since Lucy, you joined the AMTA circuit. But he gave Lucy you a very nice compliment to me today when I told him I was having you on, which is that he said that you taught him how to open, which I think is a really nice compliment for someone as accomplished as he is to give to his younger sibling who's, sort of just entering the college circuit. Is that true?
Yeah, as much as I hate to say it, it is a little bit true. When he went to TBC for the first time, before he went, he was like, I'm a great closer, and everybody knows Bennett's a great closer, and he just has this presence about him that makes him really good and like argumentative, and the judges like it most of the time. And where he kind of suffered was being conversational and casual and making the judges like him when he's telling a story. And I think that is something that I do really well, is tell a story in like a casual, friendly kind of way. And so I worked with Bennett a little bit on that before Trial by Combat his first time. And his open was phenomenal. It was one of the best opens I've ever seen. So I'll attribute that to myself. And yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how anxious was he before Trial by Combat this past June?
Oh, gosh, Margaret can speak to this too, but
yeah, I guess you were there, so that's probably a better question for both of you in different ways. I have a better perspective on it, probably.
So I obviously wasn't talking to him, but like leading up, I'd give him a solid like 9.2. And I think I know Bennett like really well, and he was putting on a brave face, but he was really nervous.
Yeah.
Margaret, what was it like that weekend with him?
I will say he was more calm than I was expecting him to be throughout the weekend. I think it was his second time doing it. He had sort of, he'd made it to the final, so it wasn't like he had some like huge crazy thing to prove. But he was calmer than I expected. We had our moments. Honestly, I think I was the most nervous of the three of us.
That's true.
Because I was like, yeah, because Steve and Bennett had both done it twice before, and like I was thrown into it, and I was like, well, they made it to the final last time, and now I'm here. What am I gonna do?
He tells me he's doing fine right now, but how is he actually managing not competing? Is he doing okay?
I think he's doing okay. He checks in on the mock trial world a lot, but his help is very useful. It seems like he's doing well to me. Lucy, maybe you got more of an insight.
Yeah, I think he's happy. I think he's doing well. He definitely likes to insert himself, which any team would be lucky to be coached by him because he's so great and has such great advice to give. And a lot of times I'll get texts that's like, let me look at your content. I'm like, well, let me do my own thing. But I think he's doing okay. So
speaking of mock trial confessions, by the way, that was the Bennett Demsky Minute brought to you by HelloFresh. Speaking of confessions, I want to also debut another segment that I've been thinking about for a long time. And I think, again, with this group, it's a good group to debut this new segment. And this is called Guests on WatchMock Read Mean Confessions About Themselves. And so we're going to show you guys one of the confessions that was posted over the summer about one of you. And I'm going to have my producer now insert sad, sappy music to play while one of our guests reads a confession about himself. So Drew, take it away.
Oh, I have to read it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to be dramatic. I don't know who Drew Polito is, but I bet he plays Fortnite really well. And I do, is the thing.
Sounds like a compliment to me.
It is. I say when I'm not working on mock trial, Phil, I really work. I'm on the fort, right? I'm working hard. Frankly, it's a profession at this point. Yes. I do pride myself on my Fortnite talent.
It is. I can't tell you how difficult it was to find a mock trial confession that was appropriate for the show about one of the six of you when looking for one to use. But that was the most appropriate one I could find. So, okay, we can cut the music here, producer. So my favorite episode of WatchMock so far was the episode that had Tamara Joseph and Clay Owens from Ohio State. So from your perspective, Drew, you are a junior now?
Yes.
So from your perspective as someone who worked with Tamara for at least a couple of years, what was it like working with her? What is the best Tamara Joseph story you can tell that won't get me fired?
Well, to answer the first question, I'm thinking of a story. I don't know. I can't promise you I'll come up with a good one, but there are a lot of them. Working with Tamara, I actually directed Tamara during when we were unstacked this season, which it's a very interesting kind of experience. One of my coaches uses a lot of basketball analogies, and he'll always say, like, when you've got a very good player, just give them the ball and ISO, like let them take care of it. So that was kind of my approach working with Tamara, and the approach that I think works very well is like we work together a lot on the evidence, but when it comes to the character and the jokes and all that, I just kind of let her take it away, and she'll come up with something great. Like we saw at Orcs with the, as I'm sure you know, the old woman character written 30 minutes before rounds.
Yep.
Or this year she's gone back to some different characters she's used. I can't spoil them. They are copyright, but if you see them in round, I'm sure they'll be great. In terms of a story, I don't really know. I haven't been teammates with Tamara for too long. Unfortunately, she is a pleasure to work with. She is a great teammate. I think maybe actually against Lucy and Rob's team, I had maybe the worst redirect I have ever done. It was atrocious. I mean, because we suffice to say, we had an invention. It turned out that invention wasn't exactly allowed or I guess supported by the deposition. And I didn't know that. So I got up to redirect her on it, and like, because I thought she had just messed up or forgotten something. And she was steaming. She was so mad at me after round. And after we like got it sorted out, she was very kind about it afterwards. Like she was like, mistakes happen, but that's the best one I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sorry, I can't come up with a better.
How competitive is she? I mean, she was so on the episode, just like so. I was laughing the entire time. I'm like, I still go back and watch it when I need a good laugh every now and then. But what it like just I can't even imagine her being like angry about something that happened competitively. Is she like super competitive?
I think so, but she is. I will say, like, it is very. Some people get mad. Tamara never get. When I say like Tamara was like mad, that's like for Tamara. That's just like, oh, that you shouldn't have done that. Let's make it better next time. Like that's kind of her level of like competitiveness or like being like upset about something, or like you shouldn't have done that type of deal. I think she is competitive, but she does it in a kind of way where it's very like, let's do our best to win, as opposed to the kind of, like getting mad at your teammates when they're not performing. It's a very like conducive to a good team environment, I think.
So I've only seen her perform on Zoom.
Yes.
I can't imagine what it's like being in the room when she's like doing that whole thing. Is it crazy?
Oh, it's great. No, I mean, we one time I was directing her, and she went on this long, like, kind of rant about her, like, lover or something of that nature. I forget. There were so many lover jokes with Tamara that I frankly lost count, but it got objected out on relevance. And I just remember she, like, looked at the judge and she was like, of course you don't care about what I have to say.
So
it's electric.
If like the world could see the unedited footage from that episode, it's a gold mine. It's
easy.
It's very good. There was a lot of stuff I had to cut out that I did not want to cut out, but I had to cut out. And she is one of a kind. How's Ohio State going to do this year?
I think pretty good. I think one thing I'd kind of thought my freshman and sophomore year was that it was always like, I always felt like the timing was just a little bit off. Like freshman year, I don't think our style plays great to Zoom, like the way that we've just been taught. So like kind of unteaching those habits to adjust to Zoom, especially when the understanding with Zoom was temporary, was a bit difficult for us. And last year, I mean, I'm sure you guys saw it. We had amazing witnesses like Gabby Dockler, Tamara, like 2 All-Americans, both as your witnesses, like very, very good. And I think, but our attorneys were young. Like I think of the 6 attorneys, 4 were sophomores, like a very, very young attorney bench. So this year, I think those attorneys are kind of coming into their own. We've got some witnesses, very young. I mean, one of them, Hannah L. Nimmer, who got a Gampty Award as a witness, incredible. Iris McKenzie, incredible character witness. I think I'd like to think that, you know, the timing's right. We've got people who are really working hard to be better and to really make that push because we know that we can. It's just more a matter of getting it done.
So last, I want to talk about Emory and Noelle. You guys are sort of in a similar boat, I'd say, to the Ohio State crew. You guys have been one of the best teams over the last couple of years. You're 14th in TPR. Your competitors have been selected 4 times for trial by combat over the past 3 years, which is obviously a big feat. How much of an impact do you think it will have on Emory losing Sarah DeLacy and Ria Lacaraggio this year? Are you guys going to be able to replicate the success you've had over the past couple of years?
Yeah, I honestly believe so, because I think such a big part of being a student-run program is the people who are teaching us are like our teammates. Like I've learned so much from Ria. I never got the chance to be on a team with Sarah, but I know that so many people, like, you can just see your styles in each other so much because you work so closely together. So of course them leaving is definitely a hit, and I really just like miss being on a team with them. But our A team just got back from Cubate and they did amazing. And yeah, I'm really excited for the rest of the season. I think just like that's one of like my favorite things about being a student run program is that you just like you get to kind of pass on those skills and all of the things that you've learned and just see like the kind of replications, and then also the way that like new attorneys and witnesses will take things in their own direction. It's really cool.
So I know this group here sort of has a blend, because Noelle, you mentioned being student run. This group sort of has a blend of programs that are student run, have coaches, somewhere in the middle. Do you guys have a take on what's better? I mean, maybe you're all partial to what your program does, but I'm curious if you guys have a take on whether it's better to be student run, better to have coaches, or not.
I mean, obviously I'm from a student run program, so I do think I'm biased, but I love being student run. There's definitely been times where selfishly I've kind of wished there's been like an adult who's in charge and would just like make decisions for us or tell us what to do. Because sometimes when you have like school and work and life, like it gets overwhelming to run a program like this that's so big and like does so much. But at the end of the day, I think it's so rewarding that we get to make all of our decisions for ourselves. Yeah, and I think Tufts specifically has been very lucky to have a lot of not just great competitors, but very, very strong leaders and very strong organizers who have really left us like an infrastructure that's very easy to work within. Like I feel like there's a lot of resources that were sort of there when I like was coming up on the program. So I think being student run has a lot to do with not just like the strength of your competitors, but the strength of their abilities to like build a program that can function without them and without coaches. And I think that's really gratifying. So I'm partial to being student run personally.
Can I just, I will pass on some pearls of wisdom to the collective group here. Just my 2 cents. When I was at Delaware, we were student run. We had like adults who would answer the phone if we didn't know what like a legal term in the case meant or something like that. But we were making the decisions. We wrote the content with each other, and we were deciding all the strategy stuff and things like that. I think at Delaware, the last couple of years, we had a really good team. I was on the team, but Ben Wallace's younger sister Ellie, who's an All-American, very good. Andrew Donnelly, All-American, was a very good attorney. Cody Reeves who was recently a coach at Virginia, was an All-American witness, and we had a couple of other very good witnesses. But looking back, I think the fact that we were student run kind of held us back, because especially now being in law school where all of the teams are coached, heavily coached by lawyers. I think we made a lot of content decisions that at the time seemed to sound good, but sort of made no sense until like real lawyers were judging the rounds. I think all of us would have improved if we had someone in the room coaching us on performance and like technical skills. So at a program like Tufts, where you guys have a lot of talent, do you ever think maybe if we just handed the reins over to, an alum who's now a lawyer, someone we trust, to, like you said, to make decisions, to kind of take that off of your plates, that it would be a net plus for you guys? Or do you think it's a net plus being student run for some other reason?
That's a fair question. I think there are times where I think it would be useful, and we certainly have alum help in not like a formal coach setting, but especially for nationals, like on the turnaround, like we always have alums come in and watch stuff and give us comments. Usually it's really recent alums, but still, like that's a huge help to us. But honestly, I really do think overall it's a net positive for us to be completely student run, and I think that's something we're finding out even more this year. Because we're so young and we just lost a lot of our like big names. And I think what we're discovering pretty quickly is that the way for us to do well this year is to do what this team should be doing and not what last year's team should have been doing. And I think if we had a lot of alums coaching us, it would probably sort of pull us into a style that doesn't necessarily work for the people we have left. And I think that the fact that sort of we get to control what Tufts style is now, right? Like we get to control what Tufts does now, I think will be a net positive for us this year.
Which of your programs would you say of the, I guess, 4 programs between the 6 of you, is the most coached, most heavily coached, meaning like not current students who are quote unquote coaches, like alums or real lawyers who are making roster decisions or making some content decisions? Do any of you guys have that kind of coaching in your programs? So which of your programs is like the most coached? Like when I said, like, how do you guys define coaching?
I think Ohio State probably. Like we have full-fledged coaches for all our teams, which is nice. Like, whenever we don't know what decisions to make on content or just another perspective to add to the mix, like give a bird's eye view.
And Drew, for those who don't know, who is Ohio State's head coach?
Head coach is Brian Drexel.
So in terms of what Brian does, what are his responsibilities? Is he making roster decisions? Is he controlling content? What does he do for you guys day to day?
Yeah, I would say that probably, and this is why I definitely put us as the most coached, is to my understanding, and I'm sure I'll get a text from Brian if I'm wrong, but pretty much any decision that is made, if it really came down to it, would be his call. And of course, that's not how it works. Like we all will have input on what theory do we want to run? What content do we want to do? What are the character stuff? Like it'll a lot of be like, we make the content, we bring it in, we perform it, and he and the other coaches will look at it. But to my understanding, yeah, like the coaches will stack, make roster decisions. And when it really comes down to it, if there's a dispute over conflict, if they feel very strongly about it, that's going to be their decision.
How do you guys like that? Do you ever just sort of take the opposite position that I took with the Tufts people a second ago? Are there ever times where you're like, we're in this every day, we want to be the ones deciding who's doing what and what strategy decisions on content we're making and things like that? Do you ever sort of is there like a tension between wanting to be student run and being willing to sort of let someone take total control for you guys?
Not really. I mean, I think a part of it is I say, like, if it comes down to it, which in my experience, I've never seen it come to a point where it is absolutely like, we are absolutely going to do this. I think a lot of it's more just discussion. Like I've had plenty of times where a coach will say something like, I think we should do this, or I don't think we should do this. And I think a lot of it is just taking initiative. Like, I think this is really helpful. Like, I think some of the better content that we've made, especially this year, has come as a result of a coach initially thinks this, but then we, I don't know if challenge is the right word, but we just disagree and we talk it through and go through it. So it is very, very rare. Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen a point where a coach just shuts it down and says, we're doing it this way. It's always a discussion. And I think I'm very thankful for the guidance. Like I always say we're very blessed because we have a full-time like coaching staff, and very few programs can claim that. So I'm very grateful for it. I think it's incredibly helpful. And I don't think I or like a lot of the people in the program would be as good or know as much without them.
Do you guys from Michigan, how do you guys do it in your program? Is it entirely student run?
Yeah, essentially it is. We have three like student captains who are voted in by the whole team. And we do have like, like when it comes like a week before a competition, we'll have alumni judge our scrimmages against, this team going to Cuba and this team going to Boston and vice versa. But for the most part, we're pretty much always student run, like all in terms of characters being run, theory we're going for both sides and things like that. We all try to figure it out like one another. And me personally, I really like it because it does give you a sense of like creativity that like I'm not saying that coaches can't, because obviously they can. There are coach teams are do phenomenal, but I do think it adds like a little bit of an authentic take to it that like allows us to really like feel like, oh, this is our work and like we're really invested into it.
Well, so I don't have the TPR list in front of me, but I would guess that on balance, the teams that have a coach, and by coach I mean like someone who is in charge. Like, if to Drew's point, obviously you talk everything out and hope that eventually you can come to consensus. But if you can't come to consensus, the coach decides content, roster, strategy, all that stuff. Do you think those teams on balance are doing better? My guess would be yes.
Yeah, I would say. Well,
and of course, they're not always doing better because, for example, Tufts is number 2 right now. So they're not always doing better. But I look at a team like Virginia or Miami, right? 2 schools that have coaching staffs. They're almost never going to have bad years because no matter what their talent's like, they have such a high floor because they have someone in the room who's getting maybe a less talented squad to a certain level where they're going to compete at a certain level. So do you think on balance, coach teams are better? Like if I told you two schools got the exact same roster, one had coaches and one was student run, which would do better?
So I think that there's 2 sides to the coin of being a student run program, because it is a lot of work for the people who are running the program. These are huge logistical things to assemble these teams, get everyone together for practice 4 times a week for 2 hours each practice, prepare all of those parts, work with people outside of that, coordinate hotels, get to the tournament, do the tournament. I mean, and you do that 3 times a semester, maybe 4 if you make it to nationals. I mean, it's a huge operation and it takes a lot of resources. We have to fundraise. I mean, there is so many administrative tasks that students have to take on, like Margaret was saying, on top of just how much work it is to be a student, especially at, we're all high achieving individuals and we take our school seriously and we have ambitions outside of mock trial. And so we have like busy lives. So I think that is hard. And I think that it does put a lot of weight on students. And so I think that it's hard to compare coached teams on balance with student run teams, because the student run teams, like the coach teams have the consistency of the coach, but like every year the captains change, and it really does depend on sort of like the quality of the people you have in charge, like who's leading you at that point. And I think it is such a testament to student run programs who do successfully year in and year out, because it just shows that you have a good mentorship program for your leadership as well as for your competitors. And so I think it really is a 2-sided coin, because I also really enjoy being a student run program. It really feels like our wins are ours. It feels like we did that. But it is a lot also because, like personal relationships between like the captains and just the people on their team. I mean, you're their friends for 2 years and then they're voted into program captain and suddenly they're in this position of authority and your relationship within mock trial has changed. And so I think that's also a hard thing to navigate. I mean, it's a thicket for sure, but it's like Margaret was saying, it's a very rewarding thicket to whack your way through because you're doing it all by yourself and like no one is holding your hand. And like there's no safety net, so I think it is hard to compare them, but I think obviously overall, I mean, the coaches know what they're doing.
Thicket is a great word. Very, very, very good word. Have you guys ever had a coach like in high school or just at your Lucy, you have? What did you like it?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lucy.
No, Lucy, take it.
Well, I was going to say WashU's in a kind of funny position because we're quasi student run and quasi coached. Last year we were coached. We had a head coach, Max Handler, who coached for the past few years, and he was great. and helped lead our B team to nationals. But he left WashU. And so now we're in a position where our coaches are law students, and on the trial team at WashU Law. So they're competing and we're competing. And a lot of times when we have practice, they have practice, which means that we're running our practices alone for the most part. And even when we had coaches, we were making the decisions ourselves. Our coaches never really had any authority over the decisions that were made. Exec board did the stacking and not anything that the coaches had to do. But I will say my favorite part about having a coach, and I was coached in high school, is it's another person to have eyes on your content when you're so in it. Like, you write your stuff, everybody knows that you write your stuff, and you guys are like so in your content that it's very hard to be removed and look at it from an outside point and be like, this doesn't actually work, or this is objectionable, or we've thought about this so much that we forgot about this. And having someone else who's a little bit removed from it, who's able to come in, take a look at your content and be like, well, have you thought about this? And you have not thought about that, is really helpful. And that's why I like having a coach. Not because I want someone to be making decisions for me or writing my content, because I think that's what makes me most proud of how I do mock trial, is that I'm doing the work that I put out, but that I can just have a check in there and just be like, is this right? Did I think about this enough? Do I need someone else to look at this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like at Drexel, obviously at Drexel Law, we're coached, obviously, or else I wouldn't have a job. But I guess like setting aside like how heavy of a hand I have in content and stuff like that, just the point that you made a second ago, Lucy, is I think the thing that would give me the most anxiety if there was no coach, which is you need someone. The way that it was described to me by my first coach in law school is there needs to be a river through all the content. And like, I feel like you need someone who's looking at all of the content on a given side and saying, we have to make sure we come back to this argument in closing. And like, we need to make sure that like, if we're going to cross on this point, it comes back in the closing, or like what exhibit is going to be in when we do direct number 2. And I know that because I'm working heavily on cross number 1 and one more defense. So just having someone to sort of be the person who's making sure things are consistent and make sense and flow together and the picture fits together cohesively. Like when my students submit drafts, and we work on their drafts together, inevitably all of their first drafts could never all go together because they've forgotten that we're not really doing that we're ignoring that fact. We're like, they forgot to include this and we really need this thing for this other thing. So I kind of feel like it'd be hard to not. Do you guys have someone that sort of? Do you guys check each other's content? Like, how does that work in the student run setting? How do you make sure that you're keeping that cohesion?
We have, I mean, our captains are very much on each team, usually sort of take that role. But also, I feel like we're a pretty collaborative team, usually, especially on our spring stacked teams. It's very much like everyone's at every practice. Everyone sees every piece of content. And I actually think that's one of the problems we don't usually have, because everyone's sort of so tapped into what everyone else is doing, because we kind of have to be to function.
Yeah, Rob was talking earlier about how we have like alumni come in and judge our scrimmages. We also create like notes documents, and like each team, once we scrimmage each other, will give the other team notes. Like anybody on our team who's down and who's like available and wants to come to the scrimmage and watch it gives notes. Our captains give notes on like everybody's stuff. And also I think that in particular, our program, I mean, every year that I've been a part of this program has been very focused on making themes that can be touched on at the different parts, like themes that have places to go, either in a direct or in a cross question or an answer from a witness somewhere. And I feel like usually it does kind of start with like, if your theme can be integrated well. I feel like that is a huge like part of figuring out what your through line is going to be. But yeah, I mean, I also feel like I agree with Margaret. That is something that I don't know why our program focuses on it a lot, but I feel like that comes up in like all of our conversations about what we're going to put into the content. Like we have big content conversations about our case in chiefs.
Yeah. Hopefully people are still watching this episode because we're like almost an hour in and we haven't gotten to the actual round yet. But I just think this is such an interesting discussion, and I think there are good arguments on both sides. There's no doubt that the student-run programs in AMTA have done really well, but this obviously I'm biased. My hypothesis would be that I think with the right coach, not with just any coach, not with just some random trial lawyer who thinks they can do this because they've tried cases, but someone who has a little bit of AMTA experience at high level AMTA experience, like you guys all have, and has trial experience in real life. I do wonder if that person came into, like, let's say like a Tufts with a lot of institutional knowledge and a lot of talent, if they could make changes on the margins that would make you guys stronger. I don't know. I'd be curious to see if you could take Toby Heitens and put him with Tufts for like a semester, how that would look. I have no idea, but it's interesting, and there's really no right answer because the student run teams do just as well on balance. So
Phil, do you think you're going to be out of a job soon or something?
Yeah, this is all a very long audition. For the right price, guys, I can be lured away. We're going to watch a trial that was submitted to the survey that I put out recently for the show. And speaking of the survey, to the extent that you've got any videos or guests you want me to have on the surveys on impeachments and elsewhere on Facebook. And if you don't keep submitting me trials, I'm just going to keep having Bennett on the show. So please submit stuff that you think we should watch. But today we're going to watch the trial that you guys were all in at the Rookie Rumble this past summer. Can one of you guys tell us what this case is about?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So it was a while ago in the summer. So correct me if I'm wrong, everybody on this call. But it was about COVID tests, and it was a company who was producing COVID tests and they weren't working. And so it was then, gosh, who was
there was a whistleblower.
Oh, thank you. Right. And someone who was working at the company was like, these COVID tests don't work, and they're selling false COVID tests to everybody, and they have these like remarkably high positive rates or negative rates, whatever the word is. And the COVID tests actually weren't working. So that's what the case was about. And the defendant is the CEO of the Scanlon Screening, the COVID company.
Wrongful termination case though, right? Because it was like, yeah, he got fired for telling people that the tests weren't working.
Not that I want to go on a very long sort of preamble to watching the round, like more than we already did, but I'm curious. The Rookie Rumble format is 2 witnesses per side. Do you guys like that?
No.
Why not?
It was good. It was good for the format. Okay, first of all, should have been allowed to have 5 people on our teams. That's the real team.
Why?
Because they were really unclear. We actually got in a tiff about this. It was me and Margaret. We were already like in a team with Elena Young and Jackson Cooney and Gordy Gwill, and we were gonna do the 5 of us. That was gonna be our team, and we were like,
Rob and I were stragglers.
Yeah. Well, Rob was like with another team, whatever. He was also in a 5-person team on Michigan because the guidelines on the website were like maximum of 5 people on your team, and one of them has to be the trial tech. Right? Or you can have a different person do it for each side. And so we read that as you can have 5 people, and one of them, and all 5 people can compete as parts. And then, on each side, you have somebody be the trial tech. But what they meant was 4 competitors, plus if you want an extra person to be your 5th teammate and also only your trial tech, you can do that. But we did not understand. So we had to rearrange. And then that's how this team came to be.
It was probably a coach who wrote that rule. That's why student run programs are better.
We emailed multiple times. We were like, let us have our team. But I guess it was meant to be. Gordy knew.
Gordy was in the email like, this is not what the rule said. Like, it was really funny. But
we were using every like crossing attorney bone in our body. Like, no.
Meanwhile, I benefited from the rule because I wasn't originally supposed to be on the team, and here I am. And
here you are on the show.
Okay, to be fair, I asked Lucy to do it with me, and she was like, "I'm not doing summer mock trial. Like, get away from me. Like, I'm not doing it." And then one day we had to split up. I was like, "Lucy, you have to do it with me, please." And she was like, "Okay, fine."
That is exactly what happened.
I had to convince Rob too. He was just the trial tech on the other team.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I was like, guys, I got better things to do in my summer. I could like drive around and stuff. But Lucy was like, I mean, what's the worst you can do? Like, what's the worst that happen? I was like, fine. And then I met these lovely people. So
when does the tournament was end of July? When does the case come out?
2
It
weeks
was
before.
2 weeks earlier.
Oh, nice. It's 2 weeks prep. That's awesome. I love short prep tournaments.
I actually loved the two witnesses.
Me
I know
too.
Lucy didn't, but I did. I thought it was a great case to prep in 2 weeks. I thought the simplicity was perfect for us to be able to like prep an in-depth case, but also like have fun with it and like didn't feel bogged down by details. And if we had to do 3 witnesses, I just think it would have been too much in the time crunch.
Yeah, I like the 2v2. The other thing that is sort of one of my other hypotheses that I want to pitch to the mock trial community is obviously in-person mock trial is better. Like objectively, it's better. That is just true. But I think there is a space now that we're back to being in person completely, for there to be more Zoom stuff that happens for lots of reasons, for equity reasons. Like there's lots of programs that don't have the resources to travel. But also just like there's a lot of fun things you can do on Zoom that you can't do in person. It's easier on the host. You can get more teams involved more easily. Would you guys be up for like 1 or 2 Zoom tournaments a year? Or are you just kind of like, I only want to be in person?
I think what was cool about Rookie Rumble was like I've literally like in person never met anyone from my Rookie Rumble team, and that was like something that was really cool about it. We got to scrimmage teams that like I've like never met before that were from across the country and stuff, and I thought that aspect of it was very cool and like very much something that could only happen on Zoom. But I also felt like the reason I was so happy about it was like it was the summer. I was like, this tournament doesn't matter, like I can do things that are like fun and like different, and then also it's not like I feel like there's like all of that stress of like, okay, like I'm going to this tournament and also like I have to stay at these places and travel for hours and like drive and stuff. So like I think that Rookie Rumble being online I really liked, but in general, I don't like tournaments being online. If I'm competing with my team that I'm always with in person, like I want to be in person at these tournaments and like going against these other people then.
I would 100% agree.
Yeah.
I rescind my comment from earlier that I didn't like the 2 witness thing. I thought you just meant like in general. I think actually 2 witnesses is great for the virtual format. I would in general, I like the 3 witness setup. Like I just like a beginning, middle, end type deal. I don't know. I think that I like the strategy involved in choosing where you're gonna put each witness. But yeah, just to clarify.
Okay, but let me push back on the Zoom thing for a second. And whoever's watching this is like, please get to the trial soon. So what if there was like, let's say Virginia decides tomorrow, like Gampty is now going to be, we're going to invite the top 40 teams on TPR in a given year to compete at Gampty, and it's going to be virtual. Hang on, you guys are shaking your head no. Just wait for the rest. So they do it virtual. There's 3 or 4 rounds. Let's say 4 rounds. And then the top 8 teams are invited to compete in DC in person, like a couple weeks later or something like that, or a month later. I don't know. We can figure out the details. What about something like that where you could get more teams involved in a big event without it being an undue burden on the host? They can recruit judges from all over the country. But do you think there's space for a tournament like that? Or are you guys just like, I want to be in person, regionals are in person, nationals are in person, orcs are in person. There's no reason to do anything virtual anymore.
So like in theory, I think that's a great idea. In actuality, I just can't see it working, at least with the way WashU does fall invite teams. Like having to compete and then potentially go and compete again, like because invite season is already so crunched, like I don't see there being spot for it. And even if there was, I'm not sure I would want that, because last year prepping for regionals, we did our practices on Zoom and we like rehearsed how to like look at the camera and how to unmute and how to mute and like all of the like weird Zoom things that like were so time consuming to have to learn to put on a top level performance. And I just don't think that it would be worth our time as a program to spend like having our members perfect Zoom when they're never going to compete in AMTA on Zoom.
Okay. How about this hypothetical? Let's say eventually I'm going to get you guys to be like, okay, Zoom can work. Let's say that there was a tournament that said, we really want to get your freshmen and sophomores training early in the season. So we're going to have a Zoom invitational. It's going to be in mid-October, right? So not too long after the case comes out. And we're going to give your freshmen 8 rounds over the course of 4 days. But it's going to be on Zoom. And the catch is going to be, in order for us to have that many rounds, it's only going to be 1 judge per round instead of 2 judges per round. But we're going to give you 8 trials. And we have to do it on Zoom so that way judge recruitment's easy, logistics are easy. We don't need that many trials. Are you still like, I hate this? Like, I don't want to train the freshmen. I hate them. They'll be fine.
I think that was the point of Rookie Rumble.
Yeah.
Like I think that's a great idea to do in the summer. Like, I think that I would love to have like all our freshmen compete in an 8-round tournament in the summer, but I don't want to waste the time during invite season that's already so crunched to have on Zoom when they're never going to compete on Zoom again.
Yeah. It's difficult for it being during the season because like there's so many opportunities to do in-person mock trial. And plus like Zoom mock is just so different with like, people can read and like, like the skill to make demos are really cool. Screen share is not really, doesn't translate to in court. So it's like, it's really hard because like, they're just so different.
Yeah, I think that's what was good that like Rookie Rumble was like the case was contained to that tournament because at least for us, like regionals to orcs was a crazy difference because we were like, okay, we're making a Zoom case in chief and then we're making like a case in chief that like works for in person.
I think the Rookie Rumble is the way to do a virtual tournament. I actually hope that they do the Rookie Rumble next summer as well. It was such a great way to network across the community and work with people outside of your own program. I think it was such an amazing opportunity for that. And I feel like what you're describing that would be in the middle of the season would be people staying on their own teams. And I felt like one of the things I loved the most and that I felt like I got the most out of from doing Rookie Rumble was working with people in other programs.
I admit I was a Rookie Rumble hater. I was like, I'm not doing mock trial in the summer. Like, you cannot pay me to get on a Zoom call and like read a case and write an open and do a direct. You can't pay me. And then I ended up doing it and I loved it.
And like, then by the end of it, she was paying us.
Exactly. It was a great experience, and I never would have met Lucy or Rob. And I never would have gotten a chance to be on a bench with Margaret. Like, that would never happen. And it was so much fun.
Well, I haven't convinced you that coaches are better, and I haven't convinced you that Zoom is viable. And this is why you guys are all from student-run programs. You're not used to a coach telling you guys what's better. So
I think
you'll get us one day.
All right. Mercifully, we're going to get to this trial now. So the first thing we're going to watch is Lucy, your cross of the plaintiff expert. And our plaintiff expert is not here to introduce himself. So can you tell us who played your plaintiff's expert?
Yeah, so that is John Hubbard. He's his second year here at Ohio State, incredibly talented. His attorney is, I would say, even better than his witness here. So he's a dog. He's a dog. He works very hard, very, very talented. And what we really went for with this character was we were just looking for a way to kind of like spice it up, like juice it up. I don't know. Like when we ran it the first time, it was kind of boring. And like, Noelle, you can speak to like the development of the character. We just tried. What kind of, I guess, was the motivation for that? Was it just, let's try being old?
I think John, well, first of all, when I met Drew and John and stuff, they thought that I was coming on as a double witness because there's like some level of miscommunication. Which of course is not the case because I'm directing John here. But so John was not planning on having to witness during Rookie Rumble. So then it was like, okay, John, you're an expert now. Like, let's figure out how we can like have fun with this. And I think John, when he found out he needed to witness, he was like, I am going to like do something with this. And I think the birth of that was this incredible character. Like, John was so funny, and he would just, I think what's best about John is like he's a closer, like he's very good at coming up with things on the spot, and he would just say the most out of pocket things. Like throughout trial, on direct, unscripted, on cross, which you will see. Like, I think he was just like, okay, I'm gonna do an expert, but like I'm gonna have a good time with it and make it my own. And that's kind of how this came to be.
And do something with this witness. He did indeed. Let's watch it.
Oh yeah.
Based on the positivity data being inconsistent.
I want to start by talking about something that you mentioned in the examination. Now, you testified earlier that you were familiar with advertisements from Scanlon screaming about the safe strip. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Feldhaus, would you recognize your affidavit, your report, if I were to show it to you today?
It's like the day I wrote it, I would.
Ms. Heiner, if we could get Dr. Feldhaus's report up on the screen, please.
I feel like I remember this backfiring on me.
I feel like this happened 2 times.
I don't know if it actually, I'm just making a prediction. I'm pretty sure that he like made me look really stupid.
We'll let the people decide that. Watch it.
Right now, we're looking at the end of it. That's my signature at the end right there.
That's right. That's your signature at the end.
Yes, ma'am.
And when you came to trial today, you were aware that you were to include everything relevant to your investigation in this report, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You were aware that you had up until the start of trial today to make any changes.
Yes, ma'am.
And you were aware that you had to be entirely truthful when you prepared this report.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, Dr. Feldhaus, you testified that you were familiar with advertisements from Scanlon screaming, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you point me to a line in this report where you say that you were familiar with advertisements from Scanlon screaming?
Yes, ma'am. If you could go to line 56, I believe.
So when I watched this, I was like super impressed that he knew the number immediately.
Oh, I was immediately
Well,
getting my pants.
How did he know? Like, how did he know? It was 50, how did he know 56?
No,
I don't
so
get it.
if you can
Phil.
see, type the line number to John when I'm like, oh, I can hear what she's about to impeach on. And I didn't have a desk in front of me because this is like the only place in my house that had a blank like slate. So like you can see my arms like coming up and I'm like, oh, John is right here.
So I'm not asking you to tattletale on yourself, but were you guys like allowed to message your witnesses during the thing or no?
Yeah.
How would they police that?
It's rookie rumble. Yeah, who cares? There's no rules.
How dare you text your
Everyone
comment.
did.
The whole
Well,
point
we
of it being
did
there's no
that.
rules on a rumble. It's the whole
We
point.
messaged witnesses during rounds in all Zoom I've ever done. I don't think there's a way that they can really police that. There's no enforcement.
Is it a rule? I mean, I guess Zoom is over, as you guys have said. The statute of limitations is run. Is that against the rules?
I don't think
that?
so.
Well, because I mean, it's the same. I guess witnesses you can't usually communicate with in round, but like you can pass your, co-counsel a note and things like that. I don't remember ever seeing any kind of rule that limited messaging within your team as long as there were no coaches messaging.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It was a rule in high school on Zoom that you couldn't message the witnesses. But
Yeah, it's a rule in law school too. Like if that happened in law school, there would be like a trial within a trial about like whether that message actually like happened, and there would be like a whole protest. It'd be like a big thing. So that's why when you said that, I was like, message to a witness, that's not allowed. Like in law school, you're very programmed to like be a narc and like be the police about like all this kind of stuff. So, okay, I guess he gets no credit for that because you just told him Noelle. No big
I
deal.
honestly think he would have known. John knew that report really well. I was just like afraid that for some reason he would forget that like every single thing we had was line-sided.
Lucy knew that report really well too. You just can't tell.
Oh, of course. Like it's such a random spot
You
that
see
we
right
take
there,
it
man.
from
You
that
see
it's
it right-
like
Well, this was like a really weird part of the case because
Yeah.
Did we lose Drew?
oh, my
He's
bad.
back.
You're here.
Yes, I'm back. Because specifically, they left out, which I think we'll see in a little bit. They left out the advertisement that was like included in the case. Like that was not in the report, and like we really wanted to talk about it. And so we found just that one line. And I remember I also messaged John actually the line because we mentioned it on direct. And I saw Lucy looked up. I was like, I know she's going to impeach on it. Because to be fair, that's not really, it doesn't make sense that like the promotional, like the actual exhibit he doesn't see, but he is familiar with advertisements in general. That didn't really make sense.
I also thought it was really funny with the character that he's like shaky hand water bottle. And he's like, I don't know how to do the mute button. And they're like, tell me the exact number in this 5-page report.
Yes, I will.
He's like 56. He doesn't even
56. And I'm like, God damn it.
He has a great memory all of a sudden.
Doesn't even know about the mute button, but the 56, that's right
He
there.
remembers.
There it says, according to promotional materials from the company, the Safe Strip enabled rat provided a higher level of sensitivity compared to any other rat test on the market, providing more accurate results overall.
Dr. Feldhaus, you had to list all of the exhibits you were familiar with.
Yes, Your Honor. To hearsay?
Elaborate.
There's no contradiction in this report between what Dr. Feldhaus has testified to and what he has written. He's familiar with the exhibits, he's familiar with the promotional materials, and he said so. Any further questions about this report is just using it for hearsay. I mean,
Counsel response.
Yes, Your Honor. If I may be allowed to continue, I'm not quite done with this impeachment yet. I still have a direct contradiction that I'd like to bring out of this report.
I'm going to overrule the objection. Counsel, you are reminded, though, that because you are using this for impeachment purposes only, any other admissions outside of that will be noted by the court.
yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Dr. Feldhaus, you had to list all of the exhibits that you're familiar with in this trial today, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Heiner, can you go ahead and scroll down to the bottom of that report? Now, Dr. Feldhaus, you don't list that you are familiar with Exhibit 3 right here, do you?
No, ma'am. I haven't seen Exhibit 3, but I've seen other advertisements.
Well, doctor, you haven't seen any advertisements that we've seen today in court.
Ma'am, I don't know what you've seen today in court. All I can tell you is that I've seen advertisements from Scanlon, and they claim they're the top dog.
All right, Dr. Feldhaus. Ms. Heiner, you can go ahead and take that down. Now, I want to talk about why you're here today.
Yes, ma'am.
You're being paid.
Yes, ma'am.
You're being paid $15,000 by Chase Arnsman to be here today.
Yes, ma'am. Standard in the field.
And you're being paid $15,000 for all of the time that you spent on this case.
Yes, ma'am. For the trial test.
So Lucy, are you like panicking in your mind right now? Like as like that impeachment happens and you're like about to move on?
I don't panic in the middle of the round. I panic afterwards or before. Once I'm in the moment, it's like I'm such a like moment to moment competitor. I like because I grew up doing theater, and so it's like when you're on the stage, it's like you can't break character. Like you're in front of 100, hundreds of people or thousands of people, and like you can't, you have nowhere to go. So I think that's just really ingrained in me. I don't really freak out like in the moment usually. I have like a very delayed like freak out like the night of.
I also feel like it's not like you weren't technically both right. Like even in my objection, I'm like, oh, he said he was familiar with the exhibit. I mean, he was familiar with the advertisements. Like it's just like the case is written so weirdly in that part that it's like, it's not like the impeachment didn't make sense.
Thanks, girl.
And for your preparation.
Yes, ma'am.
And to be clear, Dr. Feldhaus, you performed all of your tests over the course of one day.
My nails.
I performed them on in February 2021. Yes, ma'am.
Over the course of one day, right, Dr. Feldhaus?
That's when I did my testing, ma'am.
And that testing took you one day.
That testing did take me one day.
Dr. Feldhaus, you didn't mention that before, did you?
It's like evasive in a way that doesn't matter, but it's just like it makes the attention go to him in such a way. It's so funny.
It was the way he answered that last question. I thought was hilarious.
This witness is so brilliantly infuriating that like I was angry for Lucy, and I was like, he's so good.
He was like, it did take me one day.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm mad,
and
but
I'm
I
like, Mr. Feldhaus.
I don't even think this is the worst part, though. Once we get to the 50 test thing, he's such a bastard on the 50 test thing. Oh my God.
This is all starting to come back to me.
Dr. Feldhaus, you didn't mention that before, did you?
I just answer the questions I'm asked, ma'am.
Well, I'd like to talk about some other details that you haven't mentioned. Now, you'd agree with me that Scanlon screening makes the safe strip for the entire city of Midlands.
Yes, ma'am. They sell it in Midlands.
So they'd have to produce hundreds of thousands of tests a day, right?
I don't know Scanlon's processing rate for COVID tests.
Well, you'd agree with me that in order to serve an entire city of people with safe strip tests, Scanlon screening would have to make at least hundreds of thousands of tests a day.
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation.
Response.
Your Honor, the witness doesn't have to enter into the mindset of any other person in order to estimate about the number of tests that Scanlon screening would make in a day. And furthermore, this is cross-examination. If the witness doesn't know the answer to this question, can feel free to say so.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
That was so fair. That was so
I don't agree. I think you're right.
Disagree.
I don't agree at all. I think I was shocked he sustained that.
Yeah,
I'm about to object. I remember this. I'm about to object so much to speculation, and I also agree with Lucy. Like, I think it was perfectly fair to ask these questions to John, but I was just like, if he ruled with me the first time, I'll run with this.
So sometimes people think speculation means generally speculating as to just like anything. But that's your definition is the correct one, which is speculating to deal with a third party's mindset. And asking whatever this guy's expertise is, like a COVID test expert, how many tests the city would need to make to service the city seems like pretty well within like what this guy's here to talk about.
Not even a general number.
That was my favorite block too, because it was like they'd have to make hundreds of thousands of tests. You looked at 50. That was barely any of the tests they made. It was such a good block. I think I'd tried to still do it somehow.
Yeah, you came back to it.
Yeah.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Dr. Feldhaus, you would agree with me that Scanlon screening makes tests for the entire city of Midlands.
Yes, ma'am. They sell them in Midlands.
So they make more than 50 tests a year.
Ma'am, I don't know how many tests they make.
Dr. Feldhaus.
I raised my objection.
It's unbelievable. Like, he's so good. He's so good. But
I can't argue with that, but it's more than 50.
Well, I guess if this team weren't a student run program and I got to coach John, I would say that like, it's one thing to be evasive. It's another thing to be evasive in a way that like hurts your character. And like for him to say he doesn't know whether this company makes more than 50 tests. I mean, the point on this cross and then in closing, maybe that this point's eventually made is how does he not know that? I mean, what is he even doing here then? Like, not like a basic thing for him to know. So I think he fights pretty smart generally, but that's a spot where I may have just conceded to your point there.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Lucy, but a lot of the like point on Feldhaus, like on every Feldhaus was like, oh, there's like so few tests that he went through that it was like, that was like the biggest like deficit of this witness, that it was just like the one fact you kind of really wanted to keep out. But I would say on both John and I's parts, like in this where I'm like trying to object it out because like he ruled me one time and then John like being evasive on it, I think it like in the moment I don't know, like looking back at this, I don't think either of us should have done what we did, but
Counsel, I'll allow you to rephrase in a way that would not invoke the witness to speculate. And then if you are not able to, please move on.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Feldhaus, out of all of the tests that Scanlon screening makes in a year, you sampled 50 of them.
Decision-making in a round is so important. And it's one of the skills that as a coach, I value when I'm selecting students for teams, like decision-making and problem solving in the round when something goes wrong. And I thought that was something that's going to get looked over by people who watch this round. But that decision that you make in that spot is so important to just land the plane and like get to your question that's clearly admissible and be done with this. I mean, I would assume that was just like the next question in your script, right?
I mean, yeah, I think I was also at that point, I was like, oh my God, clearly this judge not vibing with what I'm trying to do here. So, like, it's time to go. It's time to just give that up. I think you're exactly right. Like, that was the decision I made of just like, let's not crash the plane. Let's land it.
Yeah, I thought it looked strong.
Yes, ma'am. My analysis was a 50 test, the MDA standard.
Out of Dr. Feldhaus, it's true, though, that the MDA used a sample of 500 tests to authorize the safe strip, right?
Ma'am, the MDA standard for auditing a test is 50 strips.
Okay, Dr. Feldhaus. Well, out of all of the tests that Scanlon Screening makes in a year, you sampled 17 with positive COVID samples.
Well, 17 of those 50 were positive. Yes, ma'am.
And out of those 17 tests, you found 9 that were faulty.
Yes, ma'am. 9 safe strips that were faulty.
So when you said 53% earlier, you were talking about 9 out of 17.
Yes, ma'am. That does equal 53%.
Doctor, the only data that you personally gathered on the safe strip's positive COVID accuracy comes from a sample size of less than 20 tests, right?
Yes, ma'am. I used the standard in the field.
Well, I know you wanted to do larger tests, doctor. Isn't that right?
It was something I thought could be helpful.
Well, let's talk about just how helpful you thought it could be, because you reached out for more money.
Yes, ma'am. It costs a little bit to do all this.
You wanted to do a test with 500 samples.
I thought more samples could be helpful.
And 500 samples is the sample size that the MDA used to authorize the safe strip, right?
To authorize it, I was auditing.
Now, you would agree that it would be exceptionally difficult to determine the specific cause of this safe strip data without further testing.
Well, yes, ma'am, the cause.
You would agree that it would be exceptionally difficult, doctor.
Yes, ma'am, the cause.
And all of your requests for more funding, for more tests, well, they were denied.
I believe it was only one request, but yes, ma'am, it was denied.
Dr. Feldhaus, you requested more funding from your client.
From the investor company. Yep, I needed the funding to do the test.
Dr. Feldhaus, you were denied, but all of your requests were denied.
Yes, ma'am.
Now I want to talk about your conclusions. You performed your investigation in February of 2021, right?
No, ma'am.
Is it your testimony that you did not perform your investigation in February of 2021?
Not just February, ma'am. I started my investigation all the way back in September.
All right, Dr. Feldhaus, you performed your tests in February of 2021.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, Ms. Heiner, if I could get Exhibit 3 on the screen.
Should have said please.
Shout out late. Dr. Feldhaus, Your Honor, Exhibit 3 has been...
If they wanted you to respect the trial text, they should have been clearer about the rules.
Okay, but like shout out to Leighton really quickly, because I just realized she's not here. Yeah. She was a phenomenal trial tech. She was so on top of it. She was so helpful. Assigned to our team. No, she was just randomly assigned, and she was so like in it and helpful. And like shout out Leighton. Wish you were here. Miss you, Rip.
Shout out Leighton.
Pre-admitted pursuant to stipulation 2. Dr. Feldhaus, can you please read the date on this advertisement here?
It says February 16th, 2020.
Now, doctor, let me get something straight. You have no data from February of 2020.
No, ma'am. My investigation hadn't started yet.
Well, you can't tell us how accurate the safe strip was when this ad was published.
No, ma'am.
You cannot tell us how accurate the safe strip was when the MDA approved it.
No, ma'am.
And you can't tell us when or why the safe strip stopped working, if it ever did.
Well, I do know the safe strip stopped being, or at least wasn't, very effective in September, in October, and in February of 2021.
The doctor, you can't tell us when or why it stopped working, right?
Well, I don't know if it ever worked.
you can't tell us, Dr. Feldhaus, you can't tell us how accurate the safe strip was in February of 2020.
No, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Feldhaus. Your Honor, I have no further questions, and Ms. Heiner, you can go ahead and take that down.
What are your thoughts watching it back for the first time, I guess, in 6 months?
I was gonna
I
say,
remember what the case was about.
oh, I'm sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say a little thing on that. I think that's why actually we found that line about the advertisements, because we had been, one of our initial theories for defense was it's not false advertising if the
There's
advertisement.
no advertisements.
Yeah, like there's one advertisement and what can you do? So we scoured looking for something, and I think that was like what we found that worked really well was like he's just generally familiar with promotional materials, but not any in particular. So he can just say, yeah, they say they're the most accurate, without assigning a particular time to it.
Yeah.
I love that you could see the gears in Lucy's head turning the whole time. Like when like I love that you could like see that she was thinking on her feet, because yeah, that witness was probably, I imagine, I didn't cross him, but infuriating to cross. And I think you did a great job just like doing the best you could, and like you can tell that you're like not doing exactly what you had planned, which is cool to watch.
Yeah, I think especially like John throws so many curveballs, and having a strong last question on a fighty witness, I think is very hard. And like I feel like you just like your cross lands so well because you're like able to like think of those questions on your feet.
Yeah, I feel like he totally won that cross. Just I was so like, well, also, I mean, no shade to the other people that I had even practiced crossing in, because we did like some scrimmages beforehand. But like nobody threw me for as far of a loop as this man did. I mean, he was throwing me for all the loops. So it was a good challenge though. And I think that those are like the type of experiences that every person who ever like wants to get really good at crossing like needs to have. Like you need to go against a witness like that like forces you to you know wrangle and like get control and like do your cross and like get all the way through it. So honestly, shout out to him. He's a savage.
I think what really beat us in this round was that at the end of the day, like this round came down to who knew the facts of the case better. And in like some earlier crosses and directs, like you can tell that like we had some dates wrong and they called us out on it. And I think in that cross especially, like that was like a battle of who knew the facts better. And
they knew the facts better.
They knew the facts better. Oh yeah,
They knew it.
It was in my cross when we put up a timeline that had the wrong date on it. And I was like, oh shoot. I think it was like an old version that accidentally got shared or something. And then I was like, whatever. And I just like kept going. And then Drew was like, they have to take it down. And I was like, no, you called me on it.
No, Margaret, it was like a gift from heaven. I was like, finally something I can object to. It was so tight and clean. And so as soon as I see, I think it was November 22nd instead of November 20th. I was like, I'll take it. Like,
I think that was my fault too. I think I like made that demo and I was like really passionate about the dates. I was like, guys, I know the dates. Like I wrote them down and then I literally made like the wrong demo.
And I mean, good. Thank God you called me on it because I was just gonna keep going. I was like, if he doesn't say anything, I'm just gonna do the cross anyway. So, and I think we like tried to change it like on the fly and it didn't work.
We
and
did.
Oh, yeah. This round actually, I'm pretty sure this was also the round where Lucy's dog walked in the middle of something.
Oh
my God.
Yeah.
I remember that, bro. Oh my God.
Wait, was it during my close?
I think
I
yes.
want to say yes.
And guys, that can only happen. Moments like that can only happen on Zoom.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
bro.
that's
Just saying.
Maybe let's not watch my close, but maybe let's try to find the moment where Finn walks in.
Okay.
But yeah.
We're now going to watch Noelle, your cross of Rob as the other expert on the other side. So let's get into it.
Too early to make any definitive claims about safe strip's accuracy. Because of that small sample size and the MDA authorizing the safe strip an entire year before Dr. Feldhaus tested them at all, there are just too many unanswered questions here today.
Thank you, Dr. Patterson.
There are always too many unanswered questions.
Always.
The questions are never answered.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross, Your Honor.
You guys, Margaret, Rob, you guys matched there. Was that?
I know. I don't think it was on purpose, but I'm loving it looking back.
I,
The
Yeah,
judge
that
is
was great.
coming enough.
Everyone's very
Got in on it
room.
too.
Yeah.
it was the second day. I was like, you know what? This expert needs a maroon sweater. And I was like, God, Margaret, where is it? We're twins right now. So yeah.
Whenever you're ready.
Doctor, I just want to talk about a few of your conclusions, and we'll get you out of here pretty quickly.
Yes, ma'am.
And now you looked at Dr. Feldhaus's evaluation of effectiveness testing, right?
Yes, I did.
But doctor, you thought that Dr. Feldhaus should have tested more samples.
Absolutely. With these types of tests and with science in general, we can never be too sure.
You say that, doctor, but to be clear for the members of the jury, you have no specific evidence to believe that more samples would have produced different accuracy ratings.
Not with the resources and materials I was given. However, we haven't looked at all aspects of Midlands when it comes to the safe strip tests.
That's a yes, doctor. You have no evidence.
Not at this time, no.
You have no specific reason to believe that more tests would have produced different accuracy results.
Like I said, from Dr. Feldhaus's tests, no.
Doctor, I'm asking about you. You have no specific reason.
Well, not any at this time, but with further questions or with further testing, those questions and those reasons may come and go.
She messed me up.
That's a yes, doctor. You have no specific reason.
She messed me up so bad. It was such a fair question. I was like,
That was my favorite line in the report because I played Patterson on the other side and I was just like, so up front, I have no reasons or evidence, but this is what I think about everything. And I was like, awesome, let me deliver this.
looking back at it, I should have been like, no, I shouldn't. But yeah, it's whatever.
Such a funny question on a transcript to be like, doctor, you have no evidence, correct? Answer, correct.
This expert witness specifically was definitely lacking in facts.
Oh yeah,
it
was,
like
this
more
was
so
like the most
average.
pitiful D expert
Yeah.
affidavit I've ever seen.
Well,
I remember reading the case for the first time, and I was on the plane, so I was reading it on my iPad, and I wrote in big letters, "This is like the worst expert ever."
No, it was so bad because then there was a fact of like, oh yeah, my niece is getting like, she's like an intern at the freaking company that's getting sued now, and they're gonna hire me. I was like, oh my God, here we go. It was so annoying.
well, so I think from a case writing perspective, I think you want to make the defense expert bad and also just like fundamentally wrong. Because if the defense expert is right or like conceivably right, then you're going to have a big imbalance in the case, even if it's a civil case like this one. So I kind of think the fact that this witness is wrong and like has no evidence, as Noelle pointed out, is kind of by design, right? And do you guys think that that was probably a good thing in the case?
No, it's
I think
fair.
the issue was that like the expert in the report doesn't believe what they're saying, and like that comes across in the report. So like there's not even like the direct was really hard to write when we were doing it, and I'm sure for you guys too. It's like there's just simply nothing to say.
Yeah, I feel like the ideal defense expert is like can make a good direct, but probably gets demolished on cross and in closing. But I feel like the hardest defense experts are the ones where you literally don't even know what to say on direct. And I feel like that was an issue we ran into with this. We're like, what can this guy even say from the beginning before anyone is saying the bad parts? Like the good parts aren't even good.
But it was also nice because Rob is just such a likable guy that like you can't not like him. Like whenever he's talking, it's like, yeah, like this dude is great. Like he's so nice. So
I've known Rob for 45 minutes and I like him.
right?
Oh, appreciate
You can't
I
not
love
like
this.
Rob. He's the most likable.
Not this time.
In fact, you agree that the number of samples Dr. Feldhaus used is in line with industry standards.
It is the standard, but we can never be too sure.
So let's talk about those tests. Dr. Feldhaus, he analyzed 50 saliva samples.
Yes, he did.
17 of those were positive.
Yes, that's what the number said.
He tested 4 different rapid antigen test brands.
Yes.
The highest had an 88% positive sample identification.
Yes, it did.
Then 82.
Yes, that was the other company.
Then 71.
Yes, ma'am.
And the defendant's safe strip, it had a 53% positive sample identification.
Yes, that's what his test found.
And you certainly wouldn't agree
Okay,
the
wait.
defendant had the best.
Question, Margaret. Were you actually writing things down?
I was just gonna say that. What am I writing down?
I just looked at it. I was like, Margaret, why are you moving? Like,
I was so scared when I saw you doing that because I was like, what redirect am I about to encounter?
I was probably writing something to myself. I was probably like writing down where I was gonna go for lunch. Like I love fake writing during people's content.
I
Great.
love fake writing. I'm a fake writing girl.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Over like in person, I always pick up the legal pad when they have like a demonstrative. I write like, this round is pretty good. And that's it.
Yeah, there's 100% chance I was writing absolutely nothing useful on my legal pad.
Like,
My legal pads need to be like locked in a secret box. Like I write everything that comes into my brain during trouble.
Me too.
I got in trouble one time because I wrote something down. It wasn't even that bad, but I wrote something in big letters. I was like, why is this attorney so mean to me or something in like huge letters? But then she came over and she like showed me an exhibit and my legal pad was right in front of me with these like giant block letters that were like, why is she so mean to me? And I was like, she totally saw that.
yeah, I still have my legal pads from college, and I probably should not have those either.
I got called out one time because they're like, you're writing too much. You're taking away from like opposing counsel's like moments. I'm like, I don't care. Like this round is like, I cannot stay focused for too long.
My boss at work, who has been a trial attorney for a long time, the entire trial just writes literally the entire trial, like everything that's happening, like things that the witnesses are saying. He tries to almost like take a contemporaneous summary of the trial. And at the end of the trial for closing, he's got literally like almost double digits in legal pads of notes. I think he just wants the jury to think he's paying close attention. So he actually does pay close attention, so that way they will. But I always look at it, I'm like, that's sort of like a microcosm of what we do, or what we do on a larger level.
It's Pandora's box for sure.
Yeah.
Or Pandora's pad.
I also just want
You certainly wouldn't agree.
Like Zoom trial things. My hand gestures look absolutely crazy in this. Like I am really showing them off, but it's like I feel like I'm so used to being in a courtroom, and like a lot of my hand gestures like get like small in the courtroom. Like, but then I was like, oh, because I could like barely see myself in the Zoom box. I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't like be cutting off my arms. So then they're just like flailing all over the place so that you can see it. So I think it's just like that is one of my issues with Zoom trial, is that I have a very hard time like switching from like in person to the other, because like things look way too big on Zoom versus like how they would look in a courtroom.
The defendant had the best test on the market.
I'm not here to make any definitive claims about that because I don't know from the entire state of Midlands how well the tests were doing.
But based on that evidence, the safe strip had the lowest accuracy rating.
Off that small sample size, that's what the numbers showed. Yes.
And doctor, I want to talk about your own role in effectiveness testing. Now, you wanted to test more saliva samples.
Absolutely.
You felt it may provide different accuracy ratings.
Yes, it really could. It can help us pinpoint the reason as well.
Perhaps a better picture as to what these accuracy ratings are.
Yes.
But doctor, you didn't test more samples, did you?
No, that's not what scale and screening called me to do.
Well, you didn't test more samples because the defendant's legal team told you that you couldn't.
Yes, it seemed as though they wanted to do their own internal investigation.
Did you think about objecting to that, Margaret, as privileged?
As
privileged?
I don't know if is that an objection in Midlands?
Yeah. Oh,
I don't know. Is there case law? I mean, in real life,
I think it's a special instruction that like attorney-client, all objections based on attorney-client privilege are waived.
That's like usually a special instruction. I don't think I've ever heard it in an AMTA trial.
Yeah.
It's in the same spirit as the fact that like invoking your Fifth Amendment rights to not respond to a question as a witness is also prohibited.
But you know what I hate about mock trial sometimes is more like every sort of level of mock trial thing. Like, so I could have been on your panel, right? And I haven't read the case, obviously, because I'm like, no judge does. Rarely do they read the case. And I wouldn't have known that. I would have maybe scored you down for that. Like they just.
I feel like we always hear, I always judges are like, there was so much hearsay that you didn't object to, and it's always like party opponent, and they like don't understand how party opponent works.
Right.
They like wanted
Well,
us
that's more on them though.
well,
right?
that's
Like,
true. But like, especially with ones where like the defendant is a corporation and like all their employees, things like that. Like, I feel like there's always stuff. I want to just like make the judges read the rules in pre-trial or something, so they won't like score us down for
yeah,
not.
or like, I hate when stuff
You
that's
can't?
clear that's clearly not admissible is like stipulated admissible.
Yeah.
And like, if we ever can, I try to have my team like put that in front of the scoring judges. That way they know, like, we have no objection because it's stipulated, like things like that. But in a situation like this, you can't, like, what are you going to do? Be like, objection, I have no objection, but if it weren't for the pretrial,
But I just want you to know why I'm not making an objection.
right, like, it's
Point of order, let me explain why I'm not making an objection.
yeah, it's still a weird thing. I hate that.
The worst thing is whenever a judge is like glaring at you to object, and you know that there's a response that's like, you can give it like that, like it's party opponent, but the judge is glaring at you and they want you to object, and you're like, well, do I do it and get destroyed or and get scored up, or do I not? Like, that's the worst.
It's irritating.
Big problem last year was like, oh, why didn't you call the defendant, like Dakota Sutcliffe? You're like, we literally cannot do it. He is like, he's not allowed to. And they were like, oh, it didn't make sense, so I'm going to score you down.
Judges, the worst.
You know, did they do that internal investigation?
No, I didn't ask them. I only did my job that they asked me to do.
And I want to talk about how you agree with Dr. Feldhaus. You believe Dr. Feldhaus did a thorough investigation.
Yes, his tests were in line with the standards that we have today.
A complete investigation.
Yes, to a fair extent.
That he arrived at impressively sound conclusions.
The expert says that?
Yep.
Yep. No, Phil, that's
Line in the air.
They gave us nothing, bro. They gave us nothing.
How do you get around it? Like, in closing, doesn't the plaintiff say in every single trial, our experts' conclusions are impressively sound? Those aren't my words. Those are their experts' words. Like, what do you do with that?
You just go ahead and say, yeah, that's true.
Like, really nothing to work with on this.
You hope your credibility earlier in the cross builds up to this point. So, like, it was a bad fact, but it wasn't that bad a fact.
I retract what I said earlier about
Yes, with the sample size and all the other stuff. Absolutely.
And you believe it is a reasonable conclusion that at least some statistically significant portion of the defendant's safe strip tests were faulty.
Yes, that's the most likely reason. However, we can never be too sure.
Thank you, doctor. No further questions.
I feel like this expert would almost be passable in a criminal case where it's all just about like casting doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a civil burden, it's like, this is just useless. Like, you really can't do anything with them.
Especially in a 2-witness case. Like, if this was like the weak witness on the D side, then sure. But yeah. But I thought you played it well, Rob.
I tried my very best. I was fighting through it.
So this was a really close round. I mean, I think 2 points separated you guys across the two decisive ballots. So this round very obviously could have gone either way. Did you guys like Rookie Rumble? Did you have fun?
I loved it.
I loved it. Yeah, like way more than I expected to have fun. I really did.
It was also a great experience because, at least for me, I was tournament directing in the fall, and so I wasn't competing until Northwestern, which was November 14th and 15th, 13th and 14th. So that was really late in the year. And so for me to compete in the summer and then like get that like intense mock trial that I didn't really get in the fall invite season was really beneficial for me going into AMTA season now.
Do any of you qualify for Rookie Rumble next year? I'm assuming no, right? Is it freshmen and sophomores?
So it's rising sophomores and rising juniors.
And rising juniors.
Yeah.
So it's basically just anyone but rising seniors.
Well, not rising freshmen. So
if
are freshmen already sophomores.
So it needs to be people who are not incoming freshmen but are not rising seniors. Rising sophomores and rising juniors.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure that like incoming freshmen like wouldn't be on a team yet. Like most teams haven't had their tryouts.
The idea is it's your first or second year of AMTA competition.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so because it's in July, it's rising sophomores or rising juniors, but in theory, it's freshmen and sophomores from that past year.
Yeah,
That makes sense. Do you guys think your programs will participate again?
absolutely, probably.
I'm gonna make them.
Yeah, definitely. It will be highly encouraged.
Yeah, because one of our Michigan teams got second place in our division. So,
and I think something that's really great about Rookie Rumble is that there's a lot of really strong teams, like freshmen and sophomores who were at nationals. Like the Duke team was great. And I think it's a really great experience for people who might not have had as much experience in AMTA season or who just made it to regionals and didn't make it to Orcs, to get that experience hitting really good teams in a setting that doesn't matter at all, or to like learn from people from other programs where they might not meet other people and learn different styles. I think it's really a great experience.
So I always think about like going back to work with a college team, but my fiance would divorce me before we even got married if I did that, probably. But I think Rookie Rumble is like kind of a nice in between because it's a short prep. It happens in the summer and stuff. I would like to do it next year with like the right group of people. And it sounds like you guys are going to do it and your programs are going to do it next year. Really cool. I have a couple of quick hitters for you guys before we get out of here. I've been told by some of the people that you work with that this group is, the way that it was described to me is you guys are round buffs. You watch a lot of film. So I'm going to ask the group, what do you think is the best round that's on video ever? Rob, yeah.
Oh, I love round. I would say hands down 2015 National Champions Final. Harvard versus
Yale.
It's fantastic. You know, Daniel Stern, Zach Fields, the cross of the mayor. I love that round.
That's a good choice. I like that choice.
I would say, I think it's 2011 finals. It's the Princess Speed trial. I love that trial so much. The closer, I think, from NYU is incredible. And then the toy maker witness. Like, it's such a great round.
Yeah, we watched that on WatchMock. It's our most highly viewed episode. It was really good.
That's a good episode.
I love it.
Yeah, that's another good choice. Probably both of those rounds I think would be in my top 10 for sure.
I really like, oh, sorry. I didn't tell you. I really like 2016 Yale and UVA.
Also a good one. Dennis and Shelley, my boy. So I'm partial to that one. Current Drexel student, doing great. Other Lucy, Drew, Margaret.
I'm partial to, there's an Orcs round from 2016 that's NYU versus Yale that I really
the one that's on YouTube.
Yeah, I think so.
I was gonna say that.
Oh, there you go. I love that round. I love that. Like, I feel like the 2016 final is very much like the quintessential classic, but I love that NYU team, and I love that round.
I am the black sheep. I don't watch the film. I have seen bits and pieces here and there, but I'm not a huge I don't really watch the films. I honestly, what I remember the most is watching the final round on Zoom of nationals, like my freshman year, and watching Sydney Gaskins was in that round, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I just remember that because that was like my like, that's who I want to be. Like, that's what I want to do in this activity. So I mean, I remember that, but I'm not familiar with the canon.
Lucy Brock has better things to do with her time.
Evidently, yeah.
She hasn't been sucked into the trap yet.
No, literally.
The correct answer is the 2015 Top Gun final is the best round ever.
Oh, is that the one with?
That's my answer.
That's what I figured. I figured you just didn't want to say it. You don't want to steal my.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't want to like. Yeah.
Phil, is that the first one with Ben Wallace versus
Yeah, Rahul Hari. Yeah, it's a masterpiece in every way. But I also think the 2011 one that you mentioned, was that you that mentioned that, Rob? Or no? Oh, Noelle, you mentioned that. Would also be the other one, I would say. I mean, especially for an AMTA round, because the Top Gun round is a law school round, so there's no character witnesses, but like great expert. Amanda Mundell's the best expert I've ever seen. And Ian Lamper plays the toy maker, best character witness I've ever seen. Corellis Bryant plays the sad witness, best sad witness I've ever seen. And then the attorneys are obviously fantastic. Just really fun round and a really good explanation, really good example of what this is supposed to look like at a high level, I'd say. You guys, more than a lot of the guests that I have on the show are alums. But you guys are very much in it. Like you guys are like in the middle of like your amateur careers, very in tune with the scene and that kind of thing. So it's now December. You've got a lot of data, and you guys have been to lots of tournaments and stuff. Who's going to win NCT this year? And this is a good group. Normally I give the caveat that you can't pick each other, but there's a lot of people on this group in this call, so I won't say that.
Michigan is a Tufts cheering team. We wanted you guys to win last year. I was literally like, I remember walking out of the Boston Tea Party and being like, yeah, we just hit the Nationals winning team. Like that was fun. So I'm going to say Tufts. Final answer.
It's so hard not to say Tufts. Y'all are so good. Honestly, any of these teams, like Tufts,
Really?
Emory, OSU, like y'all, like.
Not Washington, right, Rob?
OSU especially. No, it's like it's hard. You're gonna have to give me some time on that one.
It would be so crazy, like in a good way, a strange way, for Tufts to win the year Bennett graduates. Like, it would be like poetic. It would be so crazy. I hope it happens just for chaos. And because I like you guys. Lucy, I feel like you're gonna have a good hot take about this. Tell me what's your take?
Yeah, I was thinking about it. I think there are a ton of really good teams who have like really shined in invite season that that's hard to pick. Can I say two?
Sure.
I guess that defeats the purpose of picking a winner.
No, you can say two.
Okay, I think my like initial gut reaction was Wisconsin. And I've just been so impressed with Michigan. Like you guys are just on a roll, and I would be shocked if you did not do top 10 at Nats. Like shocked.
Here's to hoping, sister.
That's my take.
We say that every year.
I trusted you guys to not pick each other, and then what do? You just all
sorry. Wait, I could scrap Michigan. I don't think they're going to do well at all.
That'll help us more, honestly.
My answer is Wisconsin.
Why Wisconsin? That's a really interesting take, and maybe because I don't have my finger on the pulse in the same way that you guys do, but like why them?
Yeah, so we're both Midwestern teams, so we see them at almost every tournament. We hit them or my program, I was running the tournament, but my program hit them at Arch, and then again at another tournament in the fall that I can't remember right now, but they always just have really great it was my team. Haha, we hit them at Northwestern. And they just have really great content. They're really smart about like how they go about their witnesses and their attorneys. And I think they have a different style. And I think Lucy said this about Michigan, and I think it's true about Wisconsin, that I just think they're like scrappy. Like they're a young team. They work with what they've got, and they play to their strengths. And like each one of them is really strong in a different way. And I think that makes them really unique and different from every other AMTA team. And especially because their program does things kind of differently, I think that they have a shot of doing really well at Nats. I could see them winning.
Is that Jackson Cundy's team? Yeah. I mean, he competed against Will Mueller in the semifinal at Gladiator in 21. So I watched him that weekend, and then in that trial. He's really good, really talented.
Legend.
I don't know the rest of their team, but I know he's super talented. These are all good picks. And we're going to play this back in late March, early April, and see how your takes have evolved. Last thing before I let you go, there's only one tournament that matters, as we all know, and that's Trial by Combat. Do you guys have a pick on who's going to win Trial by Combat 2023 in Philadelphia?
I honestly don't. I'm so not clued in about how like anything works in general, but also I like don't really know. I like how TVC, like I don't really know how Trial by Combat works. So
it's so I actually am like, it's so good to be blissfully ignorant of all this stuff, to like not have to think about it and stress about it. So I'm jealous of that.
I mean, I think I have a pretty obvious take, but I think it'd be kind of crazy if my pick wasn't Travis. Like, I just think he's done it so many times. He's so good at it. He's captivating. And he's phenomenal. He's so
okay.
great.
How about I ask you guys a better question before you're all like, yeah, Travis is going to be Travis. Is there someone who's not invited to compete at Trial by Combat last year, meaning the advocate, who you think could win this year?
Margaret Veglahn, question mark?
Exclamation point.
So true.
That's not my answer.
I'm the biggest Margaret Veglahn fan there is, but let's say you can't pick
I think
her.
you're gonna have to fight me for that.
Yeah, I was about to say, get in line.
I'll fight you guys. Totally fine. How about I ask an even better question? How about someone who wasn't there as an advocate or a second chair last year? Is there like someone who we're just not thinking of that could come out of nowhere and win this thing?
Norcon.
Who's that?
Our program captain, Norcon.
Norcon
She is one of,
Amazing.
hands down, I think that Norcon is one of the most underrated people in this entire activity. She is so good at everything she's ever tried to do. Every single part she steps into, she slays. And I think that if you put her 1-by-1 against literally anybody else in this activity, I think she wins.
Can I admit something live on WatchMock? I submitted
breaking news. Yes.
I submitted the confession that Norcon is the most underrated competitor in AMJEF.
I knew it.
It's true. I was watching old Windy City footage. We played Michigan A at Windy City last year. They were phenomenal. One of the best teams we played all year. Literally a crime they didn't qualify for the NCT because they were unbelievable. And Noor's opening and her cross of Fatima Lohan, who is one of our witnesses, who I think is like the best witness in AMJEF.
It's amazing, yeah.
So like she's so good, and I'm obsessed with the way she does mock trial, and I think she's so underrated. And I was watching that round and I said something to one of my friends. I was like, Norcon is so underrated, and I was like, I'm gonna submit a confession about that. So that was me, and I now agree with Lucy. I think Norcon would win TBC.
Have you guys all submitted at least one confession during the course
100%.
of Really?
No, I'm too scared to.
I mean, I've submitted like the links to these shows, but like that's it.
I don't even know what I would say.
Drew, I feel like you have.
Me?
Yeah.
You submitted the Fortnite one. That's what it was.
Well, listen.
Definitely has.
No, never about. Well, maybe about my Fortnite skills.
Was it one of you guys that was submitting the confessions about me? Was that one of you? Was that one of you six?
No.
About you in terms of
just anything.
No, and here's the thing, Phil. It was me. I'm sorry. I'd be hating.
It's all good. This will be your last time on the show, though. Well, guys, this was super fun. Really, really great. This is our biggest episode, probably our longest episode. But it was a lot of fun. I think people are going to really enjoy this one. Good luck with the rest of your seasons, and I hope that you guys will all come back on the show really soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is fun. And good to see everyone again.